Imagine a world where goodness isn't a choice, where every violent impulse, every forbidden desire is erased by science. At first, it sounds like salvation. But what if it means losing the very thing that makes you human? That question beats at the heart of A Clockwork Orange, the most controversial and hypnotic work by the English novelist and linguist Anthony Burgess. Published in 1962, the book landed in a world trembling with change, Cold War paranoia, youth rebellion, and a growing faith in psychology as the cure for evil. Burgess, who spoke more than 10 languages and composed symphonies on the side, once described himself as a writer obsessed with free will. And nowhere did that obsession burn brighter than here. Though A Clockwork Orange never won a formal literary award, its legacy has surpassed prizes. It's taught in universities across the world, adapted into a cult classic film by Stanley Kubrick, and debated by philosophers, priests, and teenagers in equal measure. Its strange poetry and brutal energy made it a mirror of modern civilization, beautiful, broken, and unforgettable. Listen to Alex, the story's teenage narrator, as he welcomes us into his world. What's it gonna be then, eh? A simple question, repeated like a heartbeat throughout the book, but carrying the weight of moral choice, rebellion, and the danger of control. If you love literature that bites and burns, that makes you both think and feel, stay with me. You're watching Echoes of Books, where we read not just with our eyes, but with our conscience. And if this journey moves you, if you believe stories still have the power to shake the soul, remember to like the video, subscribe to the channel, or support us with a small donation. It helps this space stay alive for readers like you. Our story begins in a city that feels both distant and frighteningly familiar. It is England, but not quite. The skyline is gray and industrial, filled with soulless apartment blocks and flickering neon. People move mechanically through their days, while at night, the streets belong to gangs. The world of A Clockwork Orange is not a vision of the far future. It is a distorted mirror of Burgess's own 1960s Britain, where youth culture was rising and moral authority was beginning to crumble. In the middle of this chaos struts a boy named Alex DeLarge, 15 years old, face smooth as porcelain, eyes gleaming with a predatory light. He wears a bowler hat tilted just so, white overalls, and the confidence of someone who believes he owns the night. Alex is no ordinary criminal. He is an artist of destruction. His language, called Nadsat, is a dazzling, twisted blend of English, Russian, and street slang. Through it, he gives cruelty a kind of melody. To him, violence is not horror, it is symphony. He leads his gang, his droogs, through the shadows. There's Dim, stupid but strong, grinning with the loyalty of a dog. Georgie, clever and ambitious, already dreaming of overthrowing Alex. And Pete, gentle, uneasy, still half aware that they are all children pretending to be wolves. Together, they roam through the city, robbing shops, brawling with rivals, terrorizing strangers, each act described in Alex's sweet, chilling tone, as if he's recounting a dance. Between the violence, Alex finds transcendence in music. He listens to Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, closing his eyes as waves of sound crash through him. "Oh, bliss, bliss in heaven," he says, trembling. Oh, it was gorgeousness and gorgiosity made flesh. It's a contradiction that defines him, beauty and brutality sharing the same pulse. But every empire of chaos has its fall. One night, after a brutal home invasion that ends in tragedy, Alex pushes his luck too far. His droogs turn on him, the sirens wail, the police drag him away. For the first time, the predator becomes prey. In prison, Alex tries to survive the slow suffocation of routine. He reads the Bible, not for salvation, but for entertainment. He enjoys the violent parts, imagining himself as a Roman soldier whipping Christ. Burgess's dark humor shines here. The boy who once worshipped Beethoven now finds poetry in blood and punishment. Then comes the experiment. The government, desperate to control crime, unveils a new program, the Ludovico Technique. It promises to reform criminals by conditioning them, associating thoughts of violence with nausea and pain. Alex, impatient for freedom, volunteers. The treatment begins. They strap him to a chair, eyes pried open by metal clamps, a machine forcing him to watch endless reels of cruelty, murder, rape, war, while a drug makes his body convulse with sickness. The cruel twist, the soundtrack to these films, is Beethoven. His beloved music becomes poison. The same notes that once lifted him to ecstasy now make him wretch. Burgess builds this scene like a symphony collapsing into madness, science invading the soul. When Alex is released, the state declares him cured. The newspapers cheer. The politicians boast. But the world has turned its back on him. His parents have rented his room to another lodger. His old friends are now policemen who beat him senseless in an alley. Even strangers take revenge for his past crimes. The boy who once laughed at suffering now becomes its target. Broken, hungry, and rejected. Alex wanders into the countryside and collapses at the doorstep of a writer named F. Alexander, a man whose wife Alex had assaulted years earlier. At first, the writer doesn't recognize him. He offers him shelter, food, sympathy. But when he discovers who Alex truly is, his kindness curdles into revenge. He decides to use Alex as a political weapon, a symbol of government cruelty. He and his colleagues lock Alex in a room and play Beethoven at full volume, knowing it will drive him mad. In one of the book's most devastating moments, Alex throws himself out of a window to escape the music. He survives, barely, and becomes a national scandal. The government, desperate to silence criticism, reverses the Ludovico conditioning. They return his free will. Alex, restored to his old self, smiles and says, "I was cured." All right. It's one of the coldest, most ironic lines in modern literature, but Burgess adds one final twist, often missing from early American editions. In the original final chapter, Alex begins to change. He meets his old gangmate, Pete, now married, calm, and ordinary. For the first time, Alex feels tired of violence. He dreams of love, of family, of peace, not because the state forced him, but because time itself has softened him. It's funny, he muses, how the colors of the real world only seem really real when you vidi them on the screen. It's the faintest flicker of maturity, a fragile hope that people can outgrow evil on their own. The story closes in silence, neither triumphant nor tragic, just human. The boy who once treated the world like a stage for cruelty now looks at it with the weary eyes of someone who's finally seen himself. If there is one thing that makes A Clockwork Orange unforgettable, it isn't just the violence, it's the way Burgess makes us hear it. The book doesn't speak in plain English. It sings in its own strange tongue, a teenage street language called Nadsat. Imagine stepping into a world where every sentence feels like both poetry and graffiti. Words twist, pulse, and tease the reader, forcing us to learn them by ear, not by definition. At first, Nadsat feels like a barrier. You open the book and meet phrases like a bit of the old ultraviolence or vidi well, my brothers, and you think, what on earth is this? But slowly, without realizing it, you start to understand. You become fluent in Alex's voice. It's as if Burgess trains the reader, conditioning us, not with pain, but with curiosity, to live inside Alex's rhythm. And by the time we understand the words, it's too late. We've already begun to sympathize with him. That is Burgess's genius. He doesn't just tell us about corruption, he makes us experience it linguistically. The musical flow of Alex's narration disguises the horror it describes. When Alex attacks someone, his sentences sparkle with rhythm and rhyme. And there was me, that is Alex, and my 3 droogs, that is Pete, Georgie, and Dim. And we sat in the Korova milk bar making up our rasudoks, what to do with the evening. It sounds almost cheerful, like a nursery rhyme from hell. Burgess once said that language was his true instrument, and he composed A Clockwork Orange like a piece of music. The words have cadence, repetition, and key changes. Even the slang is carefully chosen, part Russian, part English, part nonsense, so that it feels both alien and familiar. It mirrors the cultural anxiety of the Cold War era, when Britain was caught between 2 global powers, its youth caught between rebellion and obedience. Nadsat becomes not just slang, but a weapon, a way for young people to reclaim identity in a world ruled by adults and institutions. But there is also something sinister in its charm. The more fluent we become in Nadsat, the easier it becomes to glide past the horror. Burgess traps us in complicity. We begin to feel the rhythm of violence rather than its pain. This is where the book becomes dangerous and brilliant. The critic Roger Fowler once described Nadsat as a mask that softens atrocity. It's true. Burgess gives Alex a language that sterilizes guilt. In ordinary English, describing an assault would repulse us. In Nadsat, it becomes performance. It's artful, mischievous, even comic. By the time Alex finishes narrating a beating, we feel caught between laughter and nausea. That confusion is intentional. Burgess is forcing us to ask, if style can make evil beautiful, how easily can culture make us forget what's at stake? The sound of the book matters as much as its meaning. Read Alex's words aloud and you'll hear the rhythm of jazz, spontaneous, quick, playful. The slang pulses like percussion, while the formal phrases, borrowed from the Bible or Beethoven, ring like solemn notes of a symphony. Burgess uses this contrast to create moral dissonance. The music pulls us one way, the meaning pulls us another. And it isn't just linguistic experimentation, it's moral design. Burgess makes us feel the temptation of language, the way beauty can disguise cruelty. Every reader who finds themselves enjoying Alex's voice is reminded that evil rarely enters the world shouting. It comes singing. This is also why Burgess made Alex a lover of classical music. Beethoven's symphonies are not just a symbol of high culture, they are a metaphor for how beauty can coexist with horror. In one unforgettable scene, Alex listens to the Ninth Symphony and feels it lift him like wings. The music makes him ecstatic, divine, almost pure. Yet moments later, that same ecstasy fuels his violent fantasies. Burgess isn't mocking art. He's warning us that art itself can be corrupted when the heart behind it is empty. By weaving music into language, Burgess creates a novel that sounds like its theme. Violence is rhythmic. Control is mechanical. Beauty and horror share the same tempo. When Alex is later forced to watch films of cruelty during his conditioning, Beethoven's music plays in the background. The government hijacks art to break the spirit, just as Alex once used art to justify destruction. The circle closes. Linguistically, the novel becomes an experiment in empathy. We don't want to understand Alex, but the rhythm drags us into his head. By the end, we no longer read the book reads us. It measures how much beauty we can tolerate before we feel disgust. It tests whether our sensitivity to language can survive its own seduction. And here's the most haunting part. After finishing A Clockwork Orange, it's hard to forget Nadsat. The words linger in your mind like echoes: Droog, Vidi, Gulliver, horror show. They cling to memory, soft and strange, like the aftertaste of something forbidden. Burgess once admitted that he designed the slang to fade slowly, to keep readers haunted by the sound of moral confusion. It worked. Language, in this novel, is not a neutral tool. It is both virus and cure. Burgess uses it to make us question how power moves through words, how politicians, media, or even artists can twist meaning until the line between beauty and cruelty disappears. In Alex's world, control begins with vocabulary. In ours, maybe it does too. If A Clockwork Orange had only been a stylish experiment in language, it might have remained a literary curiosity. But what gives it enduring power is its moral engine, the question that pulses beneath every scene. What is freedom worth if it allows us to choose evil? Anthony Burgess was obsessed with this dilemma. He was raised a Catholic but lived as a skeptic, a man torn between faith in divine order and fascination with human chaos. When he wrote A Clockwork Orange, he had just survived a series of personal tragedies. His first wife assaulted, his own health failing, his country gripped by political unrest. He imagined a future where the state's promise of safety could become as dangerous as crime itself. The result was not just a novel, but a philosophical trap. At the center stands Alex, the pure embodiment of free will gone feral. He kills, steals, and mocks morality, not out of necessity, but out of choice. He believes his own cruelty proves that he's alive. I was me, he says, and what I'd done was choice. Burgess makes that line echo like a confession. For Alex, violence is not just pleasure, it's identity. He lives by instinct, ungoverned, unrepentant, until society decides it cannot afford his freedom anymore. Enter the Ludovico Technique, the novel's most chilling invention. It's sold as a miracle, a way to cure crime without punishment. No prisons, no pain, just conditioning. But what it really does is turn the human soul into a machine. It rewires Alex's brain so that the thought of violence triggers unbearable sickness. He loses the ability to choose. He can no longer harm, but he can no longer love either. Even his passion for music is poisoned. Beethoven, once his doorway to transcendence, now makes him physically ill. The treatment doesn't create morality, it erases humanity. Burgess uses this transformation to stage one of literature's most profound moral arguments. Is a person who cannot choose evil truly good, or merely harmless? The prison chaplain says it best: when a man cannot choose, he ceases to be a man. It's one of the most important lines in 20th century fiction. The government sees Alex as a success story. The reader sees a ghost. This theme reaches far beyond the novel's fictional world. In Burgess's time, behaviorism, the psychological theory that human behavior could be shaped through conditioning, was at its height. The Soviet Union was experimenting with re-education programs. Western democracies were exploring psychological reform for criminals. Burgess saw in all of this a terrifying future, not a dictatorship of violence, but a dictatorship of virtue, a world where people obey not because they believe, but because they are programmed to. That's why the novel's title is so precise. A Clockwork Orange describes something organic turned mechanical, something that looks alive but ticks like a machine. It's the perfect image for a soul stripped of free will. Burgess even explained it once, saying, "It is the attempt to impose mechanical order on human life." The title is both metaphor and prophecy. Alex's story becomes a mirror for modern society. We, too, live surrounded by systems that promise to fix us, algorithms that predict our desires, laws that claim to protect us from ourselves, moral codes written in binary. The Ludovico technique has evolved. It just wears different clothes. Every time our choices are simplified, every time outrage replaces thought, we move closer to Burgess's nightmare, a world of well-behaved machines. But Burgess does not let the reader off easily. He refuses to idealize Alex. The boy's crimes remain monstrous. His victims, though unnamed, linger in our imagination. The old writer and his wife, the helpless drunk, the girl deceived by charm. Burgess insists that freedom is not romantic. It's messy, painful, dangerous. Yet he believes it must remain untouched. Man is defined by the right to choose, he said in an interview. Without choice, there is no morality, only conditioning. That idea draws from the heart of Christian philosophy. Burgess's Catholic background taught him that goodness only has meaning if it's chosen. Angels, who cannot sin, are perfect but not moral. Humans, who can fall, are capable of redemption. By turning Alex into a creature incapable of sin, the state destroys his soul's capacity for salvation. It kills his moral potential under the guise of reform. In one of the novel's most haunting scenes, Alex, newly cured, wanders through the city and is beaten by a group of men. He doesn't fight back. He can't. His body rebels against the instinct. Later, when he meets a girl, he tries to flirt, but even desire triggers nausea. Burgess writes the scene without pity. The world watches, satisfied, as the monster is tamed. But what's left is not justice, it's an absence, a hollowed-out boy who can no longer feel. This is where the novel's emotional core lies. We start by fearing Alex. We end by fearing the world that creates him. Burgess flips the moral polarity halfway through the story. The villain becomes the victim. The saviors become oppressors. The reader's sympathy shifts and reshifts, forcing constant moral recalibration. It's exhausting. And that's the point. The book is not meant to give peace. It's meant to test the conscience. In the British edition's final chapter, Burgess gives us one last turn of the screw. Alex, older and quieter, finds himself bored by violence. He wants more than chaos. He wants purpose. This ending, omitted in the first American print, changes everything. Without it, the story ends in bleak irony, the boy restored to evil, the circle unbroken. With it, we see the possibility of moral evolution, the hope that time, not tyranny, can teach virtue. Burgess fought for this ending because he believed that even monsters can grow up. Yet many readers find that final flicker of optimism almost unbearable. After so much darkness, can we really believe that Alex will change? Burgess's answer is quietly human. Maybe. He doesn't promise redemption, only the chance for it. And that chance, fragile as it is what separates man from machine. The moral heart of A Clockwork Orange is not about punishment or forgiveness. It is about the terrifying beauty of choice. Burgess invites us to imagine a world where moral behavior can be engineered, then asks if such a world would still have a soul. Alex, the violent boy who loved Beethoven, becomes the test case for our own humanity. Through him, Burgess whispers a warning that still feels urgent today. To live without freedom may be safe, but it is not life. To understand A Clockwork Orange, you have to imagine the world that gave birth to it, a world of transformation, anxiety, and rebellion. Britain, in the early 1960s, was a nation caught between two centuries. The war was over, but its ghosts still haunted the streets. Young people, born after the bombs, were discovering that the old values, religion, respectability, obedience, no longer held power. They wanted something new, something loud. The newspapers called them teddy boys and mods and rockers. The adults called them hooligans. Burgess called them prophecy. When Burgess wrote the novel in 1961, he was watching the rise of a youth culture that terrified the establishment. The Beatles were not yet icons, but the energy of rebellion was everywhere, in the streets, the fashion, the language. The moral codes that had once defined British life were unraveling, and Burgess, both fascinated and alarmed, decided to capture that chaos in fiction. Alex and his droogs are not random delinquents, they are the exaggerated children of this social moment. Their clothes, White jumpsuits, bowler hats, parody both working-class uniforms and upper-class refinement. Their violence is not born of poverty, but of boredom. They attack because nothing else makes them feel alive. Burgess saw this as a symptom of a deeper sickness, a society that had lost belief in meaning. "We are," he wrote in an essay, "living in an age of moral neutrality, where choice itself is entertainment." The city Alex inhabits is a portrait of urban alienation. The landscape of concrete flats, broken lampposts, and endless bureaucracy mirrors the mechanization of post-war Britain. In Burgess's Manchester, his real-life home city, new housing projects were rising everywhere, replacing old neighborhoods with cold, identical towers. The government promised progress, but what it delivered often felt soulless. People lived closer together but felt more alone. That emotional emptiness echoes through every page of A Clockwork Orange. At the same time, politics was shifting toward control. The Cold War had made surveillance and propaganda part of everyday life. Governments on both sides of the Iron Curtain believed in the perfectibility of man through science, a dream that easily slipped into nightmare. The Soviet concept of re-education, the Western obsession with behavioral psychology, the growing power of television, all contributed to Burgess's fear that humanity was becoming programmable. The Ludovico Technique is, in many ways, a caricature of the scientific optimism of the 1950s and 60s. It's what happens when the dream of rational progress forgets the irrational core of the human heart. But Burgess was not simply writing political satire. He was writing a moral lament for a generation caught between extremes. On one side stood the youth, restless and violent, tearing down old values. On the other side stood the state, eager to restore order through control. Neither offered true humanity. Burgess saw both as forms of slavery, one to instinct, the other to authority. A Clockwork Orange is his desperate attempt to find the thin line of freedom that runs between them. There's also a quieter layer to this social portrait, the role of art and media. By the time the novel appeared, television had become the new religion. Newsreels, advertising, for pop music, all were shaping how people saw themselves. Burgess, a man of letters and symphonies, feared that language and art were losing their spiritual power. Alex's worship of Beethoven becomes a metaphor for this loss. He feels genuine awe when he hears the Ninth Symphony, but he immediately turns that beauty into fuel for violence. Culture, in Burgess's view, had ceased to elevate. It had become another drug. This tension would later explode in Stanley Kubrick's 1971 film adaptation. Kubrick turned Burgess's moral fable into a stylized fever dream, vivid, shocking, and seductive. The film amplified the satire, draping violence in visual beauty. Many viewers missed Burgess's caution and embraced the spectacle. Newspapers accused Kubrick of glamorizing brutality, and real-life crimes were even linked to the movie. The outrage grew so strong that Kubrick withdrew the film from British distribution for decades. Ironically, this censorship echoed the novel's very theme, society's desperate urge to control what it cannot understand. For Burgess, who valued complexity over clarity, this misunderstanding was painful. He once remarked, half amused, half bitter, that people remembered the film's costumes but forgot the book's conscience. Yet he also recognized that this was proof of his point. Art, like morality, can be manipulated by context. Once you release it into the world, it becomes part of the culture's machinery. And in the culture of the 1960s, machinery was everywhere. The decade was a paradox, technological optimism colliding with moral exhaustion. Science promised liberation through invention, while the human spirit seemed to drift toward numbness. Burgess's novel, set in a future that looks suspiciously like his present, captured this contradiction perfectly. It's why the book feels both dated and timeless, a product of its moment and a prophecy of ours. Even the slang of Nadsat carries historical resonance. Its mix of English and Russian wasn't random. The Cold War had made the East-West divide a psychological landscape. Burgess fused the two languages to create a dialect of cultural anxiety. His teenagers speak in the voice of a hybrid future, neither capitalist nor communist, neither moral nor immoral. It's a linguistic reflection of globalization before the word existed. All these details, the youth riots, the experiments in psychology, the moral fatigue, feed into Burgess's larger vision, a warning that civilization, no matter how advanced, is always one step away from barbarism. The state may impose order, the church may preach virtue, but the human heart remains unpredictable. Man, Burgess once said, is a creature of music, not mathematics. That is the spirit of the 1960s. Rhythm, rebellion, and the refusal to be measured. Seen through the lens of history, A Clockwork Orange becomes more than a dystopia. It becomes a time capsule of a society losing its certainty and a mirror of ours, still asking the same questions. What happens when youth feels no future, when government replaces understanding with punishment, when beauty becomes background noise? Burgess didn't give answers. He gave us a warning wrapped in melody. Few novels divide readers as violently as A Clockwork Orange. It's one of those rare works where every reaction, admiration, disgust, confusion, feels justified. Some call it a masterpiece of moral philosophy. Others call it the most dangerous book ever written. And in between lies a strange unease, as if Burgess planted a trap inside every reader's conscience. Let's start with the people who love it. For them, the novel is not about violence at all. It's about the fragility of choice. On Reddit threads and literary forums, fans often describe their first encounter with the book as a slap that made me awake. One reader wrote, "It made me hate myself in a good way. I didn't know how easily language could make me complicit." That word, complicit, comes up often. Burgess's Nadsat slang seduces us. By the time we can understand Alex, we've already begun to sympathize with him. The horror isn't in what he does, it's in the way we start to understand why. But not everyone feels that way. Many readers never get past the nausea. On TikTok and in book clubs, younger audiences sometimes reject A Clockwork Orange outright, calling it stylized cruelty or pretentious shock art. They argue that the novel romanticizes violence by filtering it through poetic language. Some even say that Burgess lets Alex off too easily, that he spends too much time inside the mind of a monster and not enough on the suffering of his victims. And that's the core of the disagreement. The novel dares to make its narrator charming. Alex is witty, articulate, and strangely vulnerable. He speaks to us like an old friend. "What's it going to be then? Eh?" he asks, again and again, as if inviting us into his game. We don't want to play, but we can't look away. Burgess knew this effect would disturb people. He once said, "It's easy to hate monsters when they snarl. It's harder when they smile." Some critics see this as moral genius, forcing readers to confront the dangerous allure of charisma. Others see it as moral failure, a writer losing control of his own creation. In academic circles, this debate has lasted 60 years. Feminist scholars, in particular, have pointed out how Burgess's empathy rarely extends to the women Alex brutalizes. Their pain remains abstract, filtered through the boy's theatrical voice. To them, the book's central question, freedom versus control, feels hollow when the victims' voices are silenced. Yet there's another camp that finds in Burgess something more complex. These readers argue that the absence of empathy is the point. The novel isn't asking us to forgive Alex, it's showing us the vacuum that forms when art divorces itself from conscience. The violence feels empty because Alex is empty. And when the state reforms him, the emptiness remains. It just changes costume. Whether he's free or conditioned, he's still hollow. In that reading, the novel becomes a critique, not of youth, but of society's inability to nurture meaning. Then comes the film. Stanley Kubrick's adaptation in 1971 changed everything. The movie's visual style, bright, ironic, erotic, turned Burgess's moral parable into a cultural lightning bolt. Critics were shocked, censors furious, audiences hypnotized. Some viewers walked out disgusted. Others dressed up like Alex, quoting his lines at parties. Burgess was horrified by that. He said, "Kubrick's film made it possible for viewers to enjoy the very evil I tried to condemn." To him, the film proved his theme. Even art meant as warning can become entertainment. On social media today, that split still exists. You'll find memes quoting Alex as if he's a pop icon, right next to essays dissecting him as a symbol of modern nihilism. The internet has done what Burgess predicted society would do. It turned rebellion into a brand. A user on Twitter once posted, "Alex DeLarge walked so every anti-hero could run." And maybe that's true. You can feel his fingerprints on every charming sociopath that came after. Patrick Bateman, Tyler Durden, the Joker. Each one asks the same question Burgess asked first. Do we still have souls, or just appetites? But let's pause for a moment and look at the readers who remain undecided, the ones who neither idolize nor condemn the book. Many say it left them unsettled, unsure of what Burgess wanted them to feel. That uncertainty, though, is the novel's quiet victory. Burgess didn't write A Clockwork Orange to deliver clarity. He wrote it to collapse moral certainty, the discomfort, the contradictions, the sense of being implicated. That's the experience he wanted. Even Burgess himself had mixed feelings. For years, he grew to resent the novel's fame. He once confessed that he wrote it in 3 weeks, more as a thought experiment than a masterpiece. He felt it overshadowed his other works, his musical compositions, his essays, his more ambitious novels. "I wish I'd never written it," he said once. "It made me famous for the wrong reasons." But when pressed, he admitted that he was proud of the questions it asked. "If the book still disturbs," he said, "then it still matters." So why can't we agree on Alex? Maybe because Burgess designed him to exist on the fault line between condemnation and empathy? He's not a villain we can safely hate, nor a rebel we can easily love. He's something worse, a reflection. When he laughs, we hear the echo of our own contradictions. We condemn him for choosing evil, yet we fear the world that would take choice away. We despise his cruelty, but envy his vitality. Alex reminds us that morality is not a stable structure. It's a trembling balance between chaos and control, and every one of us stands on it. In the end, the real argument about A Clockwork Orange is not between readers. It's inside us. The moment we start judging Alex, we realize how uncertain our own moral compass can be. That is Burgess's lasting gift or curse. He didn't give us a hero or a villain. He gave us a mirror, polished in slang and blood. Every generation finds its own reflection in A Clockwork Orange. When Burgess wrote it, the future was mechanical and cold, filled with bureaucrats and behaviorists. But when we read it now, the machine has changed shape. It lives in our phones, our feeds, our algorithms, systems that don't shock or condition us with nausea, but with pleasure. The Ludovico Technique has evolved. It no longer forces us to reject violence. It teaches us to consume it passively. Think about how easily we scroll past cruelty today. War, outrage, disaster, turned into content for our timelines. The same moral numbness Burgess warned against has simply changed format. Alex's nightmare world of choice without consequence feels closer than ever. He used to revel in violence for thrill. Now we watch it for distraction. Burgess's dystopia predicted a civilization where empathy could be programmed out not by fear, but by overstimulation. Philosophically, the novel still speaks to our deepest anxieties about freedom and control. We tell ourselves that we are free, that every click, purchase, and opinion is our own choice. But how free are we, really, when invisible systems predict what we'll love, what we'll buy, even what we'll believe? Burgess's government used shock therapy to force conformity. Our world uses psychology, data, and convenience. The method changed, the goal didn't. And then there's the other echo, the glorification of rebellion. When Kubrick's film hit cinemas in 1971, young people saw Alex not as a warning, but as an icon. The bowler hat, the eyeliner, the swagger. Rebellion turned aesthetic. It was thrilling, transgressive, cool. But that, too, was part of Burgess's prophecy. He warned that even evil could be commodified, that the language of freedom could be sold back to us as fashion. Decades later, that prophecy still plays out across our culture. Every anti-hero we love, from Walter White to the Joker, owes something to Alex DeLarge. He's the blueprint for the charming sociopath who makes us question where admiration ends and complicity begins. Yet the influence of A Clockwork Orange goes beyond style. It lives in the DNA of dystopian storytelling itself. Its moral tension, freedom versus safety, rebellion versus control, can be felt in Black Mirror, The Matrix, Mr. Robot, and even in the quiet despair of indie films that ask whether technology is making us less human. Each of these works borrows Burgess's essential question: what happens when the mind becomes the battlefield? The novel also continues to provoke academic debate. In universities, it's used to explore questions of ethics, linguistics, and neuroscience. Psychologists still reference it when discussing conditioning and moral agency. Literary theorists trace its structure to classical tragedy: a rise, a fall, a hollow redemption. Even theologians see in Alex's journey a darkened version of St. Augustine's confession, the sinner who learns, not through grace, but through pain. And yet, beyond theory and classroom discussions, A Clockwork Orange remains eerily personal. Everyone who reads it feels it differently. For some, it's a condemnation of youth culture. For others, a critique of authoritarianism. For some, it's a warning about the loss of empathy in modern life. And for others, it's simply a terrifying reminder that the human spirit cannot be engineered without being broken. One of the most striking modern reinterpretations came from neuroscience itself. In the 2000s, studies on behavior modification and dopamine circuits found that human decision-making could indeed be shaped, that pleasure and aversion could be reprogrammed through subtle stimuli. Reading those studies today, it's hard not to think of Alex strapped to a chair, eyes forced open, his emotions rewritten. Burgess wasn't a scientist, but he understood something profound about psychology, that the mind's freedom is fragile, and any society that claims it can fix people risks erasing them. What makes A Clockwork Orange still vibrate through our culture is its emotional honesty. It doesn't preach, it provokes. It forces us to admit that we're drawn to the very darkness we condemn. That's why it endures while other dystopias fade. Orwell gave us tyranny from above. Burgess gave us corruption from within. Huxley feared pleasure as control. Burgess feared that we'd lose our souls willingly. And then there's the quiet grace of that final chapter, the one so often forgotten. After all the brutality and punishment, Alex simply grows tired. He imagines a family, a son of his own, maybe another boy who will one day rage and destroy and eventually learn. It's a fragile moment of peace, a human heartbeat in a novel full of machinery. Burgess restores what the world had taken away, the possibility of moral growth, not through force, but through time. It's his small act of defiance against despair. If you read the book today, in an age of digital surveillance, viral outrage, and moral polarization, that ending feels almost radical. It suggests that redemption cannot be coded, that empathy cannot be installed, that wisdom cannot be rushed. It has to be lived. Maybe that's the final echo Burgess left for us, not the violence, not the slang, not even the symphony, but the simple, unmechanized truth that the human spirit must remain unpredictable, that our flaws are the price of our freedom, that our freedom, however dangerous, is the only thing that keeps us human. What if we could make people good? That was the question that opened this journey. And after all the words, all the music, all the violence, we end up right where we began, but different. Because now, the question feels heavier, more dangerous, more human. Anthony Burgess never claimed to have an answer. He wasn't preaching morality, he was diagnosing a wound. He saw a world where freedom frightened people so much that they would trade it for comfort. He saw governments, parents, teachers, all trying to simplify the soul into a formula. And he saw art, language, music, literature as the last refuge of choice. A Clockwork Orange endures because it refuses to reassure us. It doesn't tell us that evil can be eliminated or that science can fix the soul. It tells us that the battle between violence and virtue will always live inside us, and that to be human is to fight it every day. Burgess once said, "Goodness comes from freedom. It is meaningless when imposed." That line could be the novel's heartbeat. Think about Alex one last time, the boy who danced to Beethoven while committing horrors, the young man who lost his will in the name of science, the older self who dreams, just for a moment, of tenderness. He's every version of us, wild, wounded, reaching. He shows us that the human spirit can be monstrous, but it can also heal in ways no experiment could predict. That is what Burgess called the grace of choice. And that's why, more than 60 years later, this story still matters. We live in an age of endless control, curated feeds, predictive algorithms, instant outrage. We are constantly nudged, shaped, conditioned. The tools have changed, but the temptation remains the same, to turn ourselves into something efficient, safe, manageable. But Burgess reminds us that to be fully alive means to risk chaos, to love what we cannot perfect, to choose even when choice hurts. Maybe that's why the novel continues to unsettle us, because it whispers a truth we try to forget, that goodness without freedom is not goodness at all. It's obedience. And obedience, no matter how peaceful, is the slow death of the soul. So before we close this book, ask yourself, if a world without cruelty also meant a world without choice, would you still want to live in it? If this conversation stirred something in you, if it made you think or feel or even argue a little inside your mind, then join me again here on Echoes of Books. Like this video, share it with someone who loves to wrestle with ideas, and subscribe so our little corner of thoughtful readers keeps growing. Because books like A Clockwork Orange don't end when you close them. They echo in language, in conscience, in every quiet choice we make.